Lying on the beautiful northern coast of Israel, between the border with Lebanon and the city of Acre, Achziv is indeed a remarkable sight. The history of Achziv goes back to the Chalcolithic era. The Book of Judges mentions Achziv as a coastal city wanted by the tribe of Asher. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Akko, nor the inhabitants of Zidon, nor of Ahav, nor of Achziv, nor of Helba, nor of Afik, nor of Rehob. But the Asherites dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out.
In the Bible time, there is a point where the 12 sons of Jacob, I mean the 10 and the 2 of Joseph, the 12 tribes, what we called, is going to inherit the land that was promised to them. Over here, this place was promised to the tribe of Asher. Asher usually, as far as we know in general, it's a tribe that's dealing with agriculture, with a lot of oil, etc., that's in his blessing. Now, the interesting detail over here, that the city of Achziv was going to give to Asher, but Asher, as always, needed to do some kind of an action. On those days, this kind of action was to come to the city, to establish a community, and put it gently, maybe to have a fight with the local people that were over here. The tribe of Asher, instead of that, did something else. They didn't fight over here. They came, they said, this is us, but they let the population that was not Israeli, that was not Jewish, to stay in the place. Only later on, we found some kind of communities, but much later on, of a Jewish community and even a synagogue over here. We have to remember that Achziv is the northern city that the Israeli kingdom have on the sea.
Achziv is also associated with King Solomon. According to the Book of Kings, King Solomon exchanged the city in the famous pact with the king of Hiram.
Solomon is giving him two things. He's giving him oil and gold. And another interesting thing, in a certain point in their relationships, he's saying to Hiram, you know what, my brother, he called him my brother, I will give you 20 cities of Israel from this area to your property. We're not sure if Achziv was in the deal, we're not sure, but this is the area, the letter of Tzur. Hiram is not so happy with the cities. He says, my brother, what is the cities that you gave me? Something like that. And most of the scholars say that Solomon didn't really give him the cities. He gave him the opportunity to take tax in oil from these cities over there.
Later, Achziv was mentioned in other Jewish texts, like the Mishnah. The Jews here were reliable of obligations due to a big foreign population at the site. In the 12th century, the Crusaders built a castle here. Later, it was conquered by King Baibars, the Muslim leader.
We have to remember that Urban II is giving a call in Europe, let's go to release the holy places in Israel. As historians says, this is not just to release the holy places, it's also to solve some conflicts inside Europe between East and West. Anyway, when the Crusaders arrive here to Israel, they are minority. They don't speak the language, they don't eat the food, they don't know really the land. They are a very organized power, so they take over Israel. But then when they try to maintain their kingdom, they have to establish a system, and their system was to establish a castle.
In the 1950s, eccentric Eli Avivi took over parts of the beach and established a personal fiefdom called Achzivland, a micronation which aimed to separate itself from Israel. Avivi passed away in 2018.
Achziv is not just a biblical city or a crusader castle. Achziv is one of the beautiful hills on the beach in the northern Israel. In the 50s over there, colorful guy, artistic, pioneer, Eli Avivi is coming over here to a hill which no one, how to put it gently, no one have any inspiration towards this hill. It's an old hill, biblical city, crusader ruins. Soon in the beginning, already in the 50s and in the 60s, Tel Aviv, which is 2.5 hours from here, the big city, discovered this artistic guy that have his own beach, his own hill over here. The first great raves or the first great parties and the first great free spirit meeting in Israel in the 50s and in the 60s happened over here.
A look at the eclectic museum Avivi built shows us an impressive collection of jars, perhaps one of the most significant instruments for trade in this area.
We have over here handles with stamps of brands of wine, either two things, either wine or oil. that was brought all over the Mediterranean. Now we understand very clearly why Hiram, the king of Tzor, and all this kingdom, the Phoenicians, why they want to have routes for trades all over Israel. It's not enough for them. Now, by the way, for example, you know Masada, the cliff in Judea desert, far away, a palace of Herod, and then later on, a terrible story about suicide of Jews in the big rebellion. In Masada, we found jars like this, like the amphora, that was made in Crete, in Tzor, in Sidon, all over its wine that was exported into Israel, either wine or oil, we're not sure, and was brought all over the low hills, the high hills of Judea, and finally to Masada. It means that the city was, Achziv is just on the border of Israel, and then the big city is Tzor, and Tzor is importing with these jars the wine and the oil all over. By the way, until today, a lot of the olives that we find, the fruits and the oil that we find in the Mediterranean still come from Greek and other countries in the area.
A lot can be learned about the history of the entire area from this place, from the so-called sea people who settled here ages ago, to the politics, the economy, and the culture of the Holy Land.